So it is an absolute gorgeous day here in Australia. The sun's shining, you can see everyone's mowing their lawns because it's the right day to mow it, I guess. It's sunny, it's beautiful. Now, I just wanted to make a quick video on 3D printing and why I absolutely love 3D printing, and then on the other hand, why sometimes I hate 3D printing. Now, when I say hate, it's not because what I make doesn't work, and even if it does work, well, the print still comes out exactly how I wanted it to. I hate it because I feel like it takes a lot away from actually building with your hands and actually the satisfaction you get from making it with your own two hands instead of just punching it in to your computer and then loading it into the machine and then that's it. So that is my number one reason why I just hate 3D printing. But on the other hand, there's sometimes, it works out really well to make a little bearing mount, and all you got to do is just punch it in and it comes out really well. Instead of drilling a bunch of holes and not having the right bit to actually drill the hole to actually insert the bearing. But I feel like people, and myself in general, just really run to the 3D printing thing and just go, I'll just punch it in and that's good. And I'm one of those people. I put my hand up and say that is me. But there's also times where I'm 3D printing and I think I've just overcomplicated the design. I could have easily just made it from timber, but for some reason I want to make it look super flash when it doesn't need to be anything flash. I'm going to take you through a few of my 3D prints, what I've done, what I have done, what's failed and what's worked, and just let me know in the comments what your idea of 3D printing is, because I've got a few projects coming up where it's basically just a couple strips of plastic which I could easily make from timber, but I'm also leaning towards 3D printing it just for the simple fact that I think it would look cooler, when functionality wise the piece of timber would work just as well, and it would probably take an hour to do instead of taking multiple hours on the 3D printer. Now that's kind of the only one reason why I hate 3D printing is, like I said before, it takes the satisfaction out of it. Instead of looking around and saying you built this with your hands, you printed it with a computer, your computer designed machine. So I love it, but I hate it at the same time. But anyway, we'll go through and we'll show everyone my 3D prints, and I hope everyone has their own say in the comments, dislikes and likes. Alright, so here is one of the prototype prints that I came up with probably about a month, or actually probably less than a month into when I first got into 3D printing. Never 3D printed before, but I designed this kind of velocity stack air filter. You can see it's got the holes to mount onto like a little Walbro carburetor, and then I designed this little shell, but what it was going to be a bit of foam inserted in there, and I'm going to try to do all this one-handed, but it's probably not going to look too good. But a bit of foam inserted in there, and then this little shell actually just drops in over the top just like so. Bloody lawnmowers and whippersnippers. But yeah, that's the prototype air filter, so that's one. And here is another few little 3D printed parts that I've made. I've come up with this bearing support which actually locks on the front of the weed eater or whippersnipper motor, as we call them here in Australia, and it just centers this shaft in the flywheel hole because it was basically just rattling around. And yes, that worked out really nice. You can see there's just a bearing pushed in there. And here we have another, I don't know if I can take that off. Here we have another little design. You can see it's actually a 3D bearing support as well. Came out pretty nice. And here is another one that is the propeller with a little 3D printed mount. and a little rubber block. But yeah, so there's a fair few designs to come, and I've just taken this one off the little printer. It's actually a aftermarket piece of Lockline. Lockline's used on machines for dripping coolant and stuff like that, but I actually kind of want to insert a flexible bit of wire so I can move it around. I may even make a little support for a little flashlight or a light, but actually what I really want to do is, I'm guilty of watching stuff on my phone after I've been at work all day, and I tend to fall asleep, but I kind of want a little hands-free thing that kind of clips to the edge of the bed where I can just adjust it in front of my face. So I'm kind of working on something like that. So I'm just going to see if this Lockline actually works before I go ahead. And up here is a few failed prints. They're not failed, I mean I can still reuse these tubes, but that's a fail because it slipped off the bed. There's a few fails here. Basically the yellow is failed. And what that is that is the Terminator T800 project arm. You can see there the yellow looks beautiful, but it's going to get painted anyway. That's the black. But yeah, there's a few up here, like that there was printed too wide, so that's kind of a fail. It works, but it's kind of not as strong as it could be. That here is a fail because I pushed the cap on and now I can't get the cap off. It still looks cool like that. I could still wrap some mesh around that as well and use it. That's why I'm keeping it. This here is for the RC boat project, what I just showed before. It's a rudder mount with a plexiglass there rudder. That there was one of my first kind of little projects, and I'm really happy with how that turned out. Propeller, 2 propellers. This here as well was a stand for my set square so it doesn't ever tip over. Now this here is a failed mount. This is supposed to be the lid that clips onto our commercial coffee grinder at work, but I completely just messed up the measurements on it, so that's a fail. Over here underneath my eBay parts are these tiny little set squares that I use for gluing up things, mainly like these little boxes just to you know, you'll set it up, glue it and clamp it so it doesn't move. There's nothing in those actually, even though they should be filled, and there's also that there. But yeah, so far, you know what, I love 3D printing, but there's times where it gets over exaggerated for me personally, and my OCD kicks in and I want it to look super flash. So just for instance, like this GoPro mount here, this is a GoPro chest mount. There's a build video on my page. It's called the Ultimate GoPro Rig or something similar to that. You can see how it's got 2 pieces of plastic chopping board and it gets clamped in there. That there probably took, I don't know, 45 minutes or an hour to design it properly and make it work. Although if I did have the 3D printer back then, chances are I would have 3D printed it, but it probably wouldn't have been as satisfactory, or as satisfying I should say. So anyway, there's a few good pieces and a few good looks at, you know, my 3D printing experience. Now I'm sure there'll be a lot of comments on there, so maybe negative, maybe positive, but you know, I'm proud to say that I own a 3D printer, and you know, I've definitely got my use out of it. So if you have any questions, comments, or anything like that, or you want to have your say, just feel free to put them in the comment section on the YouTube video. Why you hate and why you love 3D printing, or maybe I am the only one that is hating and loving it at the same time. So please like, please comment, please subscribe, and we'll see everyone in another video.